Andrew Yang floating an interesting name for a potential president of the United States in 2024. Go ahead and throw this tear sheet up on the screen. This was in his podcast, which is called Forward, and he was talking to comedian Shane Gillis. Remember, Gillis was the one who actually, he was supposed to be on SNL rather, and he got canceled because he had like slurred some, I don't even remember exactly what he said, but Andrew Yang was one of the people that he had like racially slurred, and then Yang came out and was like, don't make this guy lose his job.
Yeah, he was like, I don't care.
So anyway, they had this whole sit-down conversation. I actually did listen to the whole thing yesterday, but the part that's making headlines here is Andrew Yang trying to draft Matthew McConaughey, one of your faves, Saagar, for president, saying we need him to get us out of this mess. Let me read you the transcript of what he says here, his analysis of the Democratic and the Republican Party. He says, you have the Democratic Party establishment who are like, hey, you got to play by these rules. Like, we're going to act a certain way. We're buttoned up, and we have a certain way of presenting. By the way, I ran for president in this career, Yang said. Then you have the Republican Party under Trump that's become this anti-institutional, F everything, burn it down kind of energy. He continued, there's a Republican establishment within that fought Trump and lost. Now everyone's going along with it. You know, there has to be a kind of this positive ex-institutional energy that comes up and ends up being a third force in American politics. He lays out his plan for his perfect ex-institutional candidate. I'm not really sure what that means, but anyway, my paragon example of this is someone like Matthew McConaughey. Like, so McConaughey is from outside the institutions, but he's not an asshole in the same way Donald Trump is. So I look at someone like that and think, God, like, that's the kind of figure we need to get us out of this mess. Gillis chimes in and says, I can't believe that's where we're at. Imagine as a country 10 years ago, hopefully Matthew McConaughey can get us out of this mess. Yang goes on to say, so you can fill in figures for Matthew McConaughey, Mark Cuban's in this category, The Rock's in this category, some would say Oprah Winfrey, and then it goes on from there. But what do you think of this since you've been a McConaughey? You've had your McConaughey flirtations in the past.
I like Matthew McConaughey. I just don't, look, I think that what happened with the gun thing actually shows that he can be politically effective if he wants, but also he doesn't have necessarily the best instincts because he effectively aligned himself with the Democratic Party, which I think is fine. I mean, because that's ultimately what he cared about and what he wanted to do. But Andrew's not wrong, but at the same time, look, a lot of the third party movement, era, and efforts that we would have right now just don't seem to be working. Right now really is just a time of like deep partisan political division. And from what I've seen, you know, the guys who I've looked to, like The Rock, you know, is a good example. I pointed to, I thought he would be an excellent guy. I was like, oh, this guy's, you know, I mean, he denounces Rogan because of pressures from online wokes, during the whole N-word thing. So it's like all of them ultimately just have pressures on them, which make them unable to actually rise above what they need to. Mark Cuban actually is not a bad example. It's somebody who actually probably could do it of anybody and has a decent story, but even then, challenging the existing political infrastructure is just so difficult that I'm not sure it would work. I think maybe in the future, maybe 5-6 years from now when people are absolutely more disillusioned with the political system.
The other part, it's not just the disillusionment. Like, there's plenty, I think the level of disillusionment is sufficient. It's just the actual structure of the system that's the problem.
Right.
And so I think the efforts that Yang is pursuing on things like ranked choice voting and trying to reform the electoral system so that there is a chance for third parties to have a real shot or at least have more of an impact on American politics, I support that 100%. I think that would be an incredible improvement. I think the fact that we're facing down this election where it's like Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, two people that everyone's like, not this again, please, anything but this, and there's almost like no way out of it because of the way that our system is structured, I think dealing with that problem is actually really important. But we haven't dealt with that problem yet. And so at this point, the idea of any third-party candidate actually having a shot at being fully successful outside of the two major parties, it's just fanciful. I mean, the model is to come in from the outside and take over one of the mainstream parties. That's what we've seen work in the past. And in a way, the Reagan Revolution was that in the Republican Party, where, you know, prior to that, Republicans had been more or less in acquiescence with major provisions of the New Deal. And then Reagan comes in, he takes over the party apparatus. It had started with the Goldwater Revolution. He takes that and he completely transforms and takes over the party. You see that with Bill Clinton and the DLC in the Democratic Party in the 90s. You see it sort of with Trump and the Republican Party in recent years, even though he ends up really governing more like a traditional Reagan, Republican than he had sort of presented himself in the campaign in 2016. But, I obviously have issues with all of these people that he floats. They're all these sort of enlightened centrist types that it's not even really clear what they actually believe or stand for or would fight for, which means that you're going to be buffeted by the winds of this one says they're offended at that, or that one says they're that you should be going in this direction. To me, it's really important you have candidates who are very clear on where they stand, what they're going to fight for, and what their program and agenda is. But that's
celeb politics are hard. Reagan was an example actually of that because he had a legitimate ideological agenda, and he was former governor of California, so he was able to translate his his showmanship with an actual governing in practice.
He had a deep ideological philosophy, thought out philosophy. Yes.
It's very interesting actually to kind of see it. So I think if anybody was going to do it, they have to do it in the way that Reagan did, or even Trump. I mean, to his credit, Trump effectively believed the same thing for 35 years for the core of his campaign.
On trade,
America's getting ripped off.
And China, very consistent.
Same thing over. You could go back and watch a clip of him I think he was on Oprah in 1979. And he was saying the exact same thing. It was shocking, really, actually, to go ahead and watch. So it has to be somebody like that. It's a very unique set of skills that could get you there. Again, to be clear, I think McConaughey could do it if he wanted to, but he has to make different choices than the ones he's currently making. All right,
guys, more for you later. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.